Most artists think more hours, more practice, and more effort is how you improve, but that's usually why they stay stuck. After 25 years of drawing portraits, I've learned there are 4 practical lessons that separate artists who make real progress from the ones who stay stuck. So in this video, I want to show you what they are so you can avoid years of frustration and start improving with intention. Okay, so lesson number 1. There was a time where I found it really difficult to sit down and draw. Not because I didn't want to, but because I built up so much pressure around it in my head that every time I thought about drawing, I just put it off. What started as a few days turned into a few weeks, and at one point it stretched into a few months. And the longer it went on, the worse it got. Not drawing made me feel lazy, and feeling lazy fed into my insecurities. That little voice telling me that I wasn't good enough. And the irony was, the very thing that would have made me feel better and become a better artist was the exact thing the pressure was stopping me from doing. So I stayed stuck. Eventually I had enough, and I told myself no matter what, today is the day. I set my alarm for 1 hour, sat in front of my art stuff, and told myself that was the only goal. Not to create something good, not to finish a drawing, just to sit there. And if I only drew for 20 minutes, that was fine. I just needed to break the ice. But what actually happened completely surprised me. I sat down, started drawing, and then I noticed something didn't look right. So I fixed it, spotted something else, started working on that, and then all of a sudden my alarm went off. A full hour had passed, and I hadn't even noticed. I was so invested in what I was doing that I turned the alarm off and just carried on for another few hours. That's when I realized the idea of sitting down to draw was actually so much harder than doing the drawing itself. After about 5 minutes, I wasn't thinking about the pressure or how long I'd been away. All of my attention was on what was just in front of me. So if you're stuck in that same cycle, don't make the goal to create something amazing. Just make it to turn up. Set an alarm for like 20 minutes and just sit down. Make starting easier. Okay, lesson number 2. Have you ever spent hours fighting the drawing the entire way, and at the end it just doesn't even look that good? So you question yourself if you should just even carry on. I see this all the time. Somebody will send me a portrait asking if I can tell them what went wrong. But before I even look at their drawing, I look at the reference. Half the time I can already see why they've struggled. The photo is blurry, the lighting's flat, and it's a tiny photo. Then to make things even harder, they've drawn it really small as well. Without realizing it, they've stacked every possible handicap against themselves before they've even started. And then when the portrait doesn't turn out the way that they hoped, they then just blame themselves. But here's the thing, learning isn't just about how hard you work, it's about choosing the challenge that's appropriate for where you are right now. Drawing something like this, when you're learning to draw, is like asking someone for their first driving lesson to drive a car with a blown out engine. You're kind of setting yourself up to fail. Choose references that teach you one thing really well. If you want to get better at proportions, give yourself a reference with clear angles. If you want to get better with your tonal shades and form, choose a reference with strong lighting and obvious shadow shapes. The easier it is to see what you're trying to learn, the easier it becomes to actually improve. Now don't get me wrong, if you want to draw the old family photo that's slightly blurry, absolutely do it. Just don't make it the portrait that you're trying to learn on. Build yourself up to it. Then when you come back to that portrait later, you'll have the skills to be able to do it justice. That's where real progress happens, not by constantly throwing yourself in the deep end, but by stacking smaller achievements over time. That's exactly what we do inside the program. We don't just jump straight into drawing the Mona Lisa. We break the portrait down into individual skills, then group those skills together so each stage builds on the last, which is how my students have gone from this to this. Okay, lesson 3 actually directly builds on the previous lesson, because even if you're practicing the right things, there's another trap that stops a lot of artists from improving. The same artists who send me their work, I ask them, how did they get there? How did you approach it? What have you tried? And more often than not, they come back with a long list of different techniques, materials, and methods that they've tried over the last few months, and then tell me that nothing seems to work. But here's the thing. Yes, it's important to experiment, to work out what you do and what you don't like, But what a lot of people do is they try a new method or material, come into a challenge, they don't get the result that they want, and then they try something else. The thing is, every new material and technique comes with what I like to call a teething period. This is the awkward stage where you're figuring out how the method works and how the material works. Sometimes it goes really well, and other times it just doesn't. The mistake is assuming those bad drawings means the method isn't working, and so you switch. Then when the next method or the next material feels uncomfortable, you switch again. And every time you do, you restart that teething period, which means you never get consistent results. Now don't get me wrong, for some people they will make that switch and it clicks for them. But most of the time there's a teething period that you need to go through first. Here's the key. Once you push through that period, that's when you can start experimenting with different materials and techniques without feeling like you're starting all over again. Because by that point, you've already built a solid understanding of the fundamentals and how everything works. So now you're just building on top of what you already know. So stay with an approach long enough to understand it. Sometimes that discomfort doesn't mean it isn't working. It just means you're still ironing out the creases. Okay, lesson number 4. I remember there was a period where I became very serious about improving my drawing. I wanted to get better, so my mindset was the more I draw, the faster I'd improve. I'd spend an entire day on a portrait without taking a proper break. But by the end, all I could see were just things that were wrong with it. Everything just felt off. But because I was on a mission, I'd keep going. I'd work late into the night trying to fix all of these problems, and more often than not, I'd actually made the drawing worse. I'd then lie in bed feeling defeated on my phone, looking through the progress photos, trying to work out where I went wrong. And every single time I would see an earlier progress photo and think, that didn't actually look that bad. So I made a plan. The next time I spent all day on a drawing, instead of giving in to that knee-jerk reaction to keep fixing things before I went to bed, I'd stop, take a photo and come back to it the next day. The interesting thing was I'd go to bed convinced I'd still have another 3-4 hours left to do, but I'd come back in the morning, spend about 20 minutes on it, and the drawing would be exactly where I needed it to be. Here's what was happening. When you've been staring at a drawing for so many hours, your brain literally stops judging it objectively. It starts filling in gaps, exaggerates everything, and sees problems that aren't actually as significant as they feel in the moment. It's called tunnel vision, and every artist gets it. I still get it after 25 years. Now, tunnel vision itself isn't the problem. The problem is the decisions you make when you're in it. That's why taking a break is so powerful. It seems so obvious, I know, but when you're in that creative flow, it's very difficult to stop. But you need to give your eyes and brain a chance to reset, not because you're lazy, but because you need to recalibrate. But here's the thing, even with that distance, it still won't fix wonky proportions if you don't know what needs to be underneath. So watch this video here where I show you 3 simple techniques to draw perfect proportions.